Aliens mistakenly SOS to the forbidden Deathworld. Then a Terran Warship emerged. In the vast emptiness between dying stars, where light itself struggles to survive against the hungry darkness, the research vessel, Gentle Current, drifted like a wounded bird with broken wings. Its pearl-white hull, once pristine and gleaming with the pride of a quarry craftsmanship, now bore jagged scars where asteroid fragments had torn through layers of advanced composites like claws through silk. Captain Elias Vey pressed his trembling webbed hand against the cracked viewport, watching ice crystals form in delicate patterns where precious atmosphere leaked into the merciless void. Each breath came harder now, the recycled air tasting of metal and desperation. Behind him, the bridge that had once hummed with peaceful scientific discovery now echoed with the labored breathing of the dying, punctuated by the soft whimpers of frightened younglings who didn't understand why the adults couldn't fix the pretty lights that were going dark one by one. Captain Spreaking. Navigator. Finrow's voice cracked like brittle glass, his normally steady hands shaking as they hovered over controls that flickered with dying power. Life support down to 12%. Oxygen recyclers are failing faster than estimated. At this rate? He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't speak the words that would make the nightmare real. They all knew what the numbers meant, painted in harsh red across their failing displays. Dr. Kara Ellen moved between the injured, with the grace of someone who had dedicated her life to healing her medical scanner, painting harsh crimson warnings across her pale, exhausted features. The device's soft chimes had become a funeral dirge, marking the steady deterioration of her patients with each passing hour. "The younglings," she whispered, kneeling beside 5 small forms huddled together for warmth near the navigation console. Their delicate gill slits fluttered like dying butterflies, their large dark eyes reflecting the bridge's emergency lighting with the trust of children who still believed the adults would save them. Their respiratory systems are shutting down faster than the adults. Their smaller bodies can't process what little oxygen remains. The emergency beacon's activation filled the bridge with haunting blue light, casting strange shadows that danced across bulkheads like the ghosts of better times. Finn's fingers, still nimble despite his weakening condition, danced across controls that had once responded with eager efficiency, but now flickered with the inconsistency of failing power systems. Emergency protocols activated, the ship's AI announced in its musical voice, though even that synthetic melody seemed strained now, as if the computer itself understood the gravity of their situation. "Scanning for rescue possibilities. Please wait." The holographic star map bloomed to life above them, a 3-dimensional tapestry of light that showed their position relative to the great civilizations of the galaxy. One by one, potential saviors appeared as golden dots against the infinite black distant civilizations that might possess the technology and resources to save them. The Hegemony Coalition appeared first, their territory marked in cool blue. Distance 47 light-years. Even with their fastest ships, rescue would take 3 days. The Aquarii would be corpses by then, floating in their beautiful tomb among the stars. The Rio Confederacy blazed to life in warm amber. 33 light-years, but their technology was limited to slower-than-light communications. Their rescue ships would take a week to reach the stranded vessel. The Vorak Empire materialized in threatening crimson. Close enough, fast enough, but the political situation made rescue unlikely. The Vorak had been growing increasingly aggressive, their expansion fleets pushing into disputed territories with the arrogance of those who mistake strength for righteousness. Each rejection felt like another nail in their collective coffin, another door slamming shut on their hopes for survival. Elias watched his crew's faces, seeing his own despair reflected in their large, expressive eyes. The younglings had grown quieter, their breathing more labored, and he knew that time was running out faster than even their worst projections had suggested. Then something changed. The scanner paused its sensors, reaching further into space, recalibrating with the desperate thoroughness of a machine programmed to preserve life at any cost. A new signature blazed to life on the display, burning brighter than all the others combined. Suitable rescue civilization found, the AI declared, with something that almost sounded like relief. Planet designation Earth, species human, technology level advanced faster than light capability, estimated travel time to rescue 18 hours. The bridge fell silent except for the soft wheeze of failing life support systems. 18 hours. It was cutting things close, perhaps closer than any of them would survive, but it was their only hope. Finn's face went white as sea foam, his gills fluttering with sudden panic as he accessed the restricted databases. Captain, Earth is in the forbidden files. Deep classification. The word hung in the air like a curse that had been given voice. Everyone knew what it meant, even the younglings who had heard the whispered stories that adult Aquari told to frighten children into good behavior. Deathworld, the galactic classification for planets so hostile and unforgiving that any species evolving there would be savage beyond redemption, violent beyond civilization's ability to contain or understand. Classification Extreme Hazard. Finn read his voice barely a whisper as he scrolled through warnings written in the formal language of council bureaucracy. Deathworld classification. Contact forbidden under all circumstances. Species designated as highly dangerous. Military capability extreme. Diplomatic status. Hostile isolation maintained for galactic security. The database entries painted a picture of nightmare creatures born from a world of endless violence beings, who knew only war and conquest, who solved every problem with overwhelming force and treated mercy as weakness. The official records spoke of intercepted transmissions filled with strategic discussions of planetary bombardment of weapons capable of cracking worlds of a species so thoroughly militarized that even their exploration vessels carried enough firepower to level cities. Dr. Ellen looked up from her dying patients, her voice carrying the exhausted desperation of someone who had watched too many lives slip away. But their technology rating shows advanced medical systems, faster than light capability with rescue protocols. Elias stared at his dying crew, at the younglings whose gills fluttered like butterfly wings in their final dance with death. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. It was the decision between certain death and possible salvation, even if that salvation came wearing the armor of humanity's deadliest children. His hand trembled as he activated the distress beacon. The ancient Aquari ritual, words of supplication feeling hollow in his mouth as he aimed their plea toward a world that the galaxy had marked with warnings, written in the blood of civilizations that had learned too late what humans were capable of when threatened. The message would travel faster than light itself, racing across the void to reach the Deathworld in mere minutes. What answer it would bring, rescue or conquest, salvation or enslavement, remained hidden in the darkness between the stars. The message raced across the void faster than light itself, carrying with it the hopes of the dying and the fears of the desperate. On Earth, in the deep underground chambers of Terran Defense Command, where the planet's military leaders planned for threats that most civilians never imagined, alarms shattered the calm of what had been an ordinary planning session. Admiral Jonathan Kane stood before the great holographic display that dominated the command center, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of distant stars and the harsh red of tactical warnings. 30 years of military service had taught him to read between the lines of crisis, to see the patterns that others missed, and what he saw in the alien transmission made his blood run cold, with implications that stretched far beyond a simple rescue mission. Children, he said simply, his voice carrying the weight of command decisions that had saved worlds and cost lives in equal measure. They have children dying out there, 5 of them according to the biological scans. The command center fell silent, except for the soft hum of quantum processors analyzing the alien message with the thoroughness that had kept humanity alive in a galaxy that seemed determined to ignore their existence. Officers gathered around the central display watching as the translation protocols worked to decode not just the words, but the emotional context of the Aquari plea for help. Colonel Sarah Reed stepped forward, her tactical mind already calculating vectors and possibilities, with the paranoid efficiency that had kept her alive through 3 different border conflicts, with species that supposedly valued peace above all else. Sir, this could be a trap. 3 council species have been building military installations in that sector over the past 18 months. The Vorak Empire, the Hegemony Coalition, and the Riel Confederacy. They're all expanding toward our borders with the kind of coordination that suggests central planning. Kane nodded slowly, his gray eyes reflecting the star map that showed humanity's position in the galaxy, like a small island surrounded by vast oceans of potential hostility. The Galactic Council had ignored Earth's requests for membership for 2 decades, treating the human homeworld like a quarantine zone, while their member species crept ever closer to human space with fleets that carried enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. But trapped between political paranoia and dying children, between strategic caution and basic human decency, there was only one choice that a human could make and still look at themselves in the mirror. Get me Captain Morrison on the Iron Hammer. Kane ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never learned to abandon those who called for help regardless of the cost. The communication array crackled to life with the efficiency of technology that had been refined through decades of border skirmishes and diplomatic isolation. The main screen flickered and resolved into the bridge of humanity's most advanced dreadnought, revealing a view of organized, controlled chaos that spoke of a crew that had trained for every conceivable emergency. Captain Nathan Morrison appeared on screen, his steady eyes reflecting 40 years of command experience earned in the deep black, where human ships patrolled alone against threats that the rest of the galaxy refused to acknowledge. Behind him, the efficient activity of a warship's bridge painted a picture of barely contained lethality. Weapons officers monitoring threat displays, navigation crew calculating hyperspace, jump coordinates, and engineering personnel managing the massive power systems that could propel 2 kilometers of armored destruction across interstellar distances in a matter of hours. Admiral, Morrison said without preamble, his voice carrying the calm competence of someone who had faced impossible odds before and lived to plan for the next crisis. We intercepted the alien transmission during routine patrol operations. Dr. Park has already begun analyzing their biological data, and preliminary results suggest we're dealing with an aquatic species experiencing catastrophic life support failure. Kane leaned forward, studying Morrison's face for any sign of doubt or hesitation. Your assessment, Captain. They're dying, sir. Whatever they are, they're not built for the kind of atmospheric failure they're experiencing. Our medical team believes we can adapt our life support systems to accommodate their physiology. Morrison paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of history pressing down on all their shoulders. Sir, this could be humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization that isn't actively trying to kill us. Kane stared at the star map, where a small blinking dot marked the location of the stranded vessel, like a distant lighthouse calling for aid across an ocean of indifferent darkness. In 18 hours, humanity would either gain new friends among the stars or face new enemies with capabilities they couldn't fully assess. But for Jonathan Kane, a man who had spent 3 decades watching politicians fail while soldiers died, the choice had never been in doubt. Captain Morrison, you are hereby ordered to proceed immediately to the specified coordinates and render assistance to the alien vessel. Full rescue protocols, but maintain combat readiness. If this is a trap, I want you prepared to defend yourself and complete the mission. Morrison's expression hardened with the resolve of someone who had spent his career balancing humanitarian duty with strategic necessity. Understood, sir. Time to show the galaxy what humans are really made of when someone needs our help. As the transmission ended, Kane turned to address his staff, seeing in their faces the same mixture of hope and concern that he felt weighing on his own conscience. I want full monitoring of this situation. If the Iron Hammer runs into trouble, I want to know before their sensors finish registering the threat. Also, get me a direct line to the President. She needs to know that we're about to either make history or start a war. Outside the command center's armored walls, Earth continued its ancient rotation, carrying billions of humans who had no idea that their species' future among the stars might depend on the next 18 hours and the choices made by strangers whose existence they had never suspected. 17 hours and 37 minutes later, space itself tore open like wounded flesh painted with fire and starlight. The hyperspace vortex that birthed the TSS Iron Hammer was a sight that would haunt dreams and inspire nightmares across the galaxy for generations to come. Reality twisted and screamed as faster-than-light engines carved a tunnel through dimensions that mortal minds weren't meant to comprehend, and from that swirling chaos of tortured physics emerged 2 kilometers of midnight black armor that seemed to absorb light itself. The dreadnought was a leviathan of destruction made manifest a thing, born from the deepest trenches of a Deathworld's imagination, and refined through decades of warfare against enemies that showed no mercy to the weak. Its hull bristled with weapon systems that could crack continents' particle beam arrays, that could boil oceans' missile launchers that carried warheads capable of sterilizing entire cities, and shield generators that could deflect the combined firepower of entire battle fleets. Aboard the dying Gentle Current, the Aquari crew pressed themselves against bulkheads as their failing sensors screamed warnings that painted their displays in shades of terror. The human vessel registered as a mass extinction event, a predator so perfectly evolved for violence that their peaceful minds struggled to process the reality of its existence. By the deep waters, Elias breathed, watching gun turrets the size of buildings track their movements with the mechanical precision of predators selecting prey from a herd. We called for rescue, and they sent us death itself, wrapped in armor and bristling with the tools of genocide. The Iron Hammer moved through space with the terrible grace of something that had been designed by a species that understood war as an art form. Its approach was measured deliberate speaking of tactical minds that had learned never to take chances with unknown variables. Smaller vessels detached from its bulk destroyer-class escorts that would have been considered capital ships by most civilizations, but which served as mere scouts for this monument to human military engineering. The communication system crackled to life with a voice like grinding stone filtered through military encryption protocols that suggested a species so paranoid about security that even their rescue operations were conducted under wartime protocols. Alien vessel Gentle Current. The voice announced with the formal precision of someone reading from a tactical manual. This is Captain Nathan Morrison of the Terran Navy. We are responding to your distress call. Prepare for boarding operations. Elias felt his crew's terror like a physical weight pressing down on the bridge, their large eyes reflecting the emergency lighting with the helpless fear of prey animals who had suddenly realized they were facing an apex predator. These were not the gentle explorers of the Council, with their philosophy of peaceful coexistence and careful diplomatic protocols. These were warriors whose very ship seemed designed to end worlds, built by a species that had turned the art of destruction into a science of overwhelming superiority. Yet with his people dying around him, with the younglings growing weaker by the minute, and Dr. Ellen's medical equipment failing faster than her ability to compensate, he had no choice but to trust in the mercy of monsters who might not even understand the concept. Human vessel. He managed his voice carrying across space to beings whose response might determine whether his crew lived to see another sunrise. This is Captain Elias Vey of the Aquari research vessel Gentle Current. We have no weapons. We are scientists and explorers. We surrender ourselves to your mercy. The pause that followed lasted an eternity measured in heartbeats and the soft wheeze of failing life support systems. In that silence, 43 lives hung in the balance, suspended between hope and despair, while alien warriors decided their fate. Surrender! Morrison's voice carried genuine confusion, as if the concept itself was foreign to the context of their meeting. Captain Vey, we're not here to conquer you. We received your distress call and came to help. Do you need immediate medical assistance? Even as he spoke, the Iron Hammer's docking bays opened like the maws of sleeping dragons. But instead of the fighters or assault craft that Aquari military theory suggested, such a vessel would carry medical shuttles, emerged sleek vessels marked with the universal symbols of healing rather than war, their hulls painted in the white and red that civilized species used to identify non-combatant medical craft. The first shuttle approached their ship with the careful precision of someone who understood that a single mistake could doom the very people they had come to save. Through the viewports, Elias could see figures in powered armor moving inside the craft, their movements suggesting the kind of training that turned ordinary beings into lethal weapons. But their equipment spoke of medical priorities rather than combat objectives, portable life support systems, emergency medical kits, and the specialized tools needed to treat injuries and illness rather than inflict them. The docking clamps engaged with a sound like thunder that echoed through both ships, followed by the hiss of airlocks connecting and equalizing pressure. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the bridge footsteps that belonged to creatures far larger and more dangerous than any Aquari had ever imagined wearing armor that had been tested in battles against enemies that the peaceful species of the Council couldn't even conceptualize. The bridge door slid open with a soft sigh of equalizing atmosphere, and the first human stepped inside like something from a fever dream of mechanical precision and barely contained power. Commander Rachel Hayes stood nearly 2 meters tall in her powered armor, a figure that seemed carved from the nightmares of species that had learned to fear the sound of human footsteps on their worlds. The armor itself was a masterpiece of military engineering, articulated plates that could stop projectiles capable of penetrating starship hulls, integrated weapon systems that could level buildings, and sensor arrays that could track targets across battlefields shrouded in smoke and chaos. Battle-scarred plates told stories of violence among the stars, while the worn grips of integrated weapons spoke of a warrior who had faced death and emerged victorious more times than the peaceful Aquari could comprehend. Everything about her presence suggested a creature born for war, raised for conflict, and trained to solve problems through the application of overwhelming force. But then she did something that shattered every preconception the Aquari held about Deathworlders, something that would echo through galactic history, as the moment when assumptions met reality and shattered like glass against stone. She removed her helmet. The face revealed beneath that warrior's helmet was undeniably human, scarred by old battles, fought in places where mercy was a luxury few could afford, marked by years of command responsibility that had aged her beyond her biological years, but possessed of eyes that held infinite compassion earned through witnessing too much death to ever treat life carelessly. When Commander Rachel Hayes spoke, her voice carried the gentle authority of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall, who had held dying comrades in her arms and sworn oaths to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The contrast between her appearance and her demeanor created a cognitive dissonance that struck the Aquari crew like a physical blow. "I'm Commander Hayes," she said in carefully practiced Aquari, the words shaped by a human throat and filtered through a translation matrix that had been hastily programmed during their hyperspace transit. "We're here to help. Where are your wounded?" What followed defied everything the galaxy believed about humans, everything the databases had recorded about the savage children of Deathworlds, who supposedly knew only violence and conquest. Instead of the brutal efficiency of conquerors, the Aquari witnessed something that challenged their fundamental understanding of what it meant to be civilized. Dr. Samuel Park entered the bridge like a force of nature contained within medical protocols, his massive frame somehow folding into a position of infinite gentleness as he approached the dying younglings. His medical scanner painted holographic displays in the air as he worked to understand alien biology, in real time, his movements carrying the precision of someone who had spent decades learning to preserve life under impossible circumstances. "Easy, little ones," he murmured, though the children could not understand his words. The tone was universal, the sound of someone who had dedicated their life to healing, who had sworn oaths to preserve life regardless of species creed, or the political complications that might arise from saving enemies of the state. The Aquari younglings were fading fast, their unique respiratory system, which processed oxygen through both primitive gills and specialized lung chambers, shutting down as the ship's atmosphere grew too thin to sustain their delicate biological processes. Their small bodies shivered with the cold that came when circulation began to fail, and their large eyes reflected the bridge's emergency lighting with the trust of children who still believed that adults possessed the power to fix anything that was broken. Dr. Park's brow furrowed as he studied the readings displayed by medical equipment that represented the pinnacle of human biotechnology devices that could diagnose and treat injuries that would have been fatal just generations before. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, making rapid adjustments to a portable breathing apparatus that had been designed for human physiology, but which could be modified to accommodate the needs of beings whose evolutionary path had taken them through entirely different environmental pressures. "How can you help them?" Elias asked, his voice carrying the exhausted desperation of someone who had watched his crew slowly dying while feeling powerless to prevent it. "You've never seen our species before. Our biology is completely different from yours." Park looked up from his work, his eyes holding the tired wisdom of someone who had saved lives in field hospitals while artillery shells fell around him, who had performed surgery in the belly of warships while space battles raged outside the hull. "The principles of trauma medicine are universal, Captain. Oxygen debt, circulatory failure, metabolic shutdown, these problems transcend species barriers. And your distress call included detailed biological data. We spent the entire hyperspace jump learning everything we could about Aquari physiology." He fitted the modified breathing mask over the smallest child's delicate gill slits, adjusting the mixture of gases with the precision of someone who understood that the difference between life and death often came down to fractional percentages and careful timing. Immediately, color began returning to the youngling's pale skin, and its breathing became less labored as its body began to receive the oxygen it desperately needed. But it was Sergeant Maria Stone who provided the moment that would echo through galactic history like a bell struck by the hammer of destiny, a single act of sacrifice that would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about the children of Deathworlds. The young Marine was working to stabilize an injured Aquari crew member, one of the older females who had been caught near a hull breach when the asteroid field had torn through their ship, when her suit's atmospheric processor began flashing warning signals that painted her helmet's display in shades of emergency red. Her oxygen reserves were critically low, the result of a malfunction caused by the hasty modifications needed to work safely in an alien ship's dying atmosphere. The logical choice was clear, written in the tactical manuals that had guided human military operations for generations: retreat to the shuttle, resupply from backup systems, and return to continue the mission. Standard protocol dictated that rescue personnel never risk their own lives unnecessarily, because dead rescuers couldn't save anyone. The Aquari she was treating could wait the few minutes required for her to restore her life support systems. Instead, Sergeant Maria Stone, veteran of 3 border conflicts, survivor of the Centauri Uprising, warrior trained from childhood to value mission success, above personal survival, calmly removed her breathing apparatus and fitted it over the injured alien's respiratory system. "Sergeant!" Dr. Park shouted, rushing toward her as she began to show the first signs of oxygen deprivation in the thin atmosphere. Her skin took on the pale cast that humans developed when their blood couldn't carry enough oxygen to sustain higher brain functions. "What are you doing?" Stone's voice remained steady despite her body's growing distress, carrying the calm professionalism of someone who had made peace with the possibility of death long before putting on a uniform. "He needs it more than I do, Doc. I can hold my breath longer than he can survive without help. Just make it quick, okay?" The Aquari crew watched in stunned silence as this warrior from a death world, this supposedly savage creature who had been raised on a planet where violence was the only constant, chose to risk her own life for a being she had never seen before, whose species she had encountered for the first time less than an hour ago. When other humans rushed to provide Stone with emergency oxygen from their portable supplies, her first words were not about her own condition or the recognition she might deserve for her heroism. "Is he stable?" she asked, even as Dr. Park worked to ensure her own survival with the efficiency of someone who had treated oxygen debt in combat situations where every second counted. "Did we get his circulation back?" Captain Elias Vey felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of the universe, like tectonic plates moving deep beneath the surface of reality itself. These creatures bred on a world of death and violence shaped by evolutionary pressures that should have produced nothing but savages and killers had crossed the galaxy to save strangers. And when faced with a choice between their own safety and the life of an alien who meant nothing to their governments or their strategic objectives, they chose sacrifice without hesitation or expectation of reward. "Warriors," he whispered to Dr. Kara Ellen, who was watching the human medics work with tears streaming down her face in patterns that spoke of wonder rather than grief. "But they came to heal." In the medical bay of the Iron Hammer, the Aquari witnessed something that would reshape their understanding of what it meant to be civilized, what it meant to be strong, and what it meant to choose compassion over convenience when the universe offered no rewards for kindness. The human medical facility was a marvel of organized compassion that challenged every assumption about Deathworld priorities and military efficiency. Advanced life support systems had been hastily reconfigured during the hyperspace transit to accommodate alien physiology, with human engineers working around the clock to modify equipment that had never been designed to treat non-human patients. Translation protocols worked overtime to ensure that even the youngest Aquari could understand the gentle reassurances of their human caregivers, with linguistic algorithms struggling to bridge the gap between species whose evolutionary paths had never intersected. Dr. Samuel Park moved between patients with the efficiency of someone who had practiced battlefield medicine on a dozen worlds, treating injuries that ranged from simple oxygen deprivation to complex trauma caused by the asteroid impacts that had crippled the gentle current. But his touches were gentle despite the massive strength evident in his hands, and his voice carried the kind of bedside manner that spoke of someone who understood that healing involved more than just repairing damaged tissue. "How do you feel, little warrior?" he asked one of the younglings, who had begun to show curiosity about the strange new environment, the child's large eyes tracking the movement of medical displays with the fascination of someone discovering that the universe was far more complex and wonderful than they had previously imagined. The youngling attempted to respond in broken English, their words filtered through a translation matrix that struggled with the subtle emotional undertones of Aquari speech. "Better. Scared, but better. Are you really from the death world?" Dr. Park smiled, and for a moment the scarred veteran of 3 different wars looked like nothing more than a kindly physician who enjoyed working with children. "I suppose we are from your perspective, but we prefer to think of it as the world that taught us the value of life." Navigator Finn Rowe watched in amazement from his recovery bed as Sergeant Stone fully recovered from her oxygen sacrifice and apparently none the worse for wear, sat beside one of the injured Aquari crew members and patiently worked through a basic language exchange. She was teaching him simple human phrases while learning basic Aquari words. In return, her scarred hands moving in gestures that transcended the barriers of species and language. "Friend," she said carefully and accented a query, pointing to herself with the kind of smile that made her battle-scarred face look almost gentle. The alien repeated the word in English, his pronunciation bringing a look of genuine pleasure to the sergeant's features. "Friend," he said, and then added something in his own language that the translation matrix rendered as "warrior who gives breath to strangers." Stone's expression softened further, and she reached out to gently touch the Aquari's shoulder in a gesture of comfort that spoke of shared understanding across the vast gulf that separated their species. "We're all just trying to get by in a universe that doesn't always make sense," she said, though the words were filtered through translation algorithms that struggled to convey the philosophical weight of her simple statement. Captain Morrison made regular visits to the medical bay, not to inspect or investigate his unexpected guests, but simply to ensure that they felt welcome aboard a ship that had been designed for war, but which was serving perhaps for the first time in its operational history as a sanctuary for the helpless and injured. He had ordered modifications throughout the vessel, adjusting lighting systems for aquari visual sensitivity, regulating humidity levels to accommodate their aquatic evolutionary heritage, even having the kitchen staff attempt to prepare foods that might appeal to alien digestive systems evolved for entirely different nutritional requirements. "Captain Vey," Morrison said during one of his visits, his voice carrying the kind of respectful concern that one professional showed another regardless of species barriers, "my crew wanted me to ask if there's anything else we can do for your people. Apparently, some of our younger personnel have been trading games and stories with your younglings. It's quite heartwarming, actually." Elias found himself studying these humans with eyes that seemed to see clearly for the first time since the emergency began. Their ship was indeed a weapon of incredible destructive potential, a dreadnought that could have reduced entire fleets to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Their training was obviously military, their discipline that of warriors who had been shaped by the harsh requirements of service in humanity's defense forces. Their equipment spoke of a species that had turned the art of warfare into a science of overwhelming tactical superiority, but their actions spoke of something deeper, a species that had learned to value life precisely because they understood how easily it could be lost, who had developed the capacity for infinite gentleness because they possessed the strength to be gentle without appearing weak. Every interaction between human crew members and their Aquari guests demonstrated a level of care that went far beyond mere duty or diplomatic necessity. Dr. Cara Ellen approached Elias with her medical scanner still in hand, her expression carrying a mixture of wonder and professional confusion that spoke of someone whose fundamental assumptions about the universe had been challenged by direct experience. "Elias," she said quietly, "I've been monitoring the human crew's biometric responses during their interactions with us. Do you know what I've found? Tell me." Stress hormones consistent with genuine concern for our welfare. Elevated activity in brain regions associated with empathy and protective instincts. Neurochemical patterns that indicate they're actually enjoying the process of helping us recover. She paused, studying her scanner's readings as if they contained the secrets of the universe. These readings don't lie. They genuinely care about strangers they've never met before, with no expectation of reward or recognition. Through the medical bay's viewports, Elias could see other human vessels arriving in response to news of the rescue mission. Not warships this time, but support craft carrying additional medical supplies, specialists in xenobiology who had volunteered to help treat alien patients, and even entertainment systems designed to help their unexpected guests feel more comfortable during what might be an extended recovery period. Word was spreading through human space about the rescue mission, but not in the way that Aquari political theory suggested it would. Instead of military reports or strategic assessments that treated the aliens as potential intelligence sources or diplomatic opportunities, the news was being reported as a simple human interest story. Their people had saved 43 lives, and the response from civilian populations was overwhelmingly positive. Offers of assistance poured in from human worlds throughout local space. Gifts for the recovering Aquari, including children's artwork, welcoming the aliens to human space with the innocent enthusiasm of beings too young to understand the political complexities of first contact. Medical researchers volunteering their services to help develop better treatment protocols for alien physiology. Even simple messages of support from human families who wanted the Aquari to know they were welcome among the children of Earth. They're not what the database claimed, Finn said quietly, watching a group of human engineers work to repair what could be salvaged from the gentle current with the kind of care normally reserved for treasured artifacts, rather than damaged alien technology. Elias nodded, feeling the weight of a revelation that would change not just his own worldview, but potentially the entire political structure of the galaxy. No, my friend, they're not monsters at all. There's something far more dangerous to the Council's comfortable view of cosmic order. What's that? They're proof that strength and compassion can exist in the same heart that the most dangerous warriors can choose to be the gentlest healers. 3 days into their recovery aboard the Iron Hammer, Captain Elias Vey received a summons that would change the course of galactic history. Admiral Kane's ready room was a study in military functionality Spartan furniture that prioritized efficiency over comfort star charts, that showed the strategic situation with brutal honesty and the accumulated honors of a lifetime spent defending humanity's precarious place in a galaxy that seemed determined to ignore their legitimate interests while treating them as a threat to cosmic stability. Kane stood before a large holographic display, showing local space in tactical detail his weathered features, highlighted by the soft glow of information that painted patterns of potential conflict across the three-dimensional star map. When he turned to face Elias, his eyes carried the weight of terrible knowledge earned through decades of command decisions that had saved lives and preserved freedom at costs that civilian populations preferred not to contemplate. Captain Vey, we need to discuss the Galactic Council and the role they've been playing in this region of space. Elias settled into a chair that had been specially adjusted for Aquari physiology, another small kindness that these supposedly savage humans had provided without being asked, without expecting gratitude or recognition for their consideration of alien comfort requirements. The Council is a union of peaceful species, Admiral. We explore the galaxy's wonders, share knowledge freely among member civilizations, and help developing societies grow and prosper according to their own cultural values and biological requirements. Kane's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes suggested that he possessed information that would challenge Elias's comfortable assumptions about galactic politics. And Earth. What does your council know about Earth and humanity's attempts to join this union of peaceful explorers? The question struck like a physical blow. Elias found himself remembering the database entries, the warnings, the absolute prohibition against contact with the Deathworld and its violent inhabitants. The records. They classify Earth as too dangerous for contact. They say humans are savage, violent, incapable of peaceful coexistence. Interesting. Kane touched a control on his desk, and the star map zoomed in on a familiar region of space. Do you recognize this area, Captain? Elias felt his blood turn cold. That's where we were stranded. The Kepler 442 region. Exactly. And do you see these installations? Red markers appeared on the display, highlighting massive structures that definitely hadn't been in the Aquari databases. Military installations, weapon platforms, fleet anchorages. Built by 3 different council species, Kane continued remorselessly. The Vorak Empire, the Hegemony Coalition, and the Riel Confederacy, all expanding toward human space, all building the infrastructure for what our analysts believe is a coordinated invasion. The implications crashed over Elias like a tsunami. But they're council members. They've sworn oaths of peace. Captain Morrison entered the room, carrying a data tablet, his expression grim. Admiral, our deep space monitors have detected fleet movements. The Vorak are mobilizing their 3rd battle fleet. Destination appears to be the Proxima system. Kane nodded grimly. That's where we have 50,000 colonists, Captain Vey. Human families who chose to build new lives on the frontier. Elias stared at the tactical display, watching as projected fleet movements painted a picture of impending catastrophe. How long until they arrive? 6 days, Morrison replied. But here's what's truly insidious. Our intelligence suggests they're planning to stage false flag operations. Make it appear as though humans fired first. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Elias felt the weight of cosmic injustice settling on his shoulders like a stone. The galaxy believed humans were monsters, while the true aggressors wore the mask of peaceful exploration. "Admiral," he said finally, "there's something you need to understand about the Council. They're not evil. They're genuinely terrified. For thousands of years, they've built a civilization based on the idea that peace comes from avoiding conflict entirely. The concept of warrior protectors is alien to them." Kane leaned back in his chair. "And when that philosophy encounters a species that chooses to fight for what they believe in, they see only the violence, not the values that drive it." Elias looked out the viewport at the stars that had witnessed so much suffering and sacrifice. They can't comprehend that the same strength used to wage war can be turned toward protecting the innocent. Morrison set down his tablet. "Captain Vey, we're taking you and your crew to Council Station Harmony. You can return to your people and tell them what you've experienced here." "Will they believe me?" Elias asked, though he already knew the answer. Kane's smile held no humor. "That, Captain, is the question that will determine whether the galaxy stumbles into a war that will consume everything we've built." Outside the viewport, human patrol ships moved through space with deadly grace wolves guarding a flock from predators that wore the masks of shepherds. The Iron Hammer changed course toward the Proxima system, carrying with it an Aquari captain whose simple rescue mission had become something far greater than anyone could have anticipated. Standing in the observation deck that had been designed to provide commanding officers with unobstructed views of space during tactical operations, Elias Vey watched human colonial space unfold before him, like a three-dimensional poem written in the language of hope and determination. This was not the barren wasteland of Deathworld savagery that he had been taught to expect, populated by monsters who knew only violence and conquest. Instead, he saw a tapestry of worlds where human children played beneath alien suns, where families built dreams among the stars, with the patient determination of a species that had learned to find beauty in harsh places. Agricultural worlds where terraforming technology had transformed dead rock into fertile soil. Research stations where human scientists pushed the boundaries of knowledge with the same curiosity that drove Aquari exploration. Defense installations that spoke not of aggression, but of a people determined to protect what they had built through generations of sacrifice and effort. Captain Morrison joined him at the viewport, his presence both reassuring and sobering. "Having second thoughts about witnessing what's coming." "Every moment," Elias admitted. "But if I return to the Council with only words, they'll dismiss me as compromised or coerced. If I'm to be their conscience, I must see the truth with my own eyes." Through the ship's corridors, Elias could hear the sounds of his crew integrating with their human rescuers. Aquari laughter mixed with human voices as the younglings played games that transcended species barriers. Dr. Ellen was working alongside Dr. Park, comparing medical techniques with the enthusiasm of scholars who had found kindred spirits. Even Navigator Finn had been invited to observe human navigation methods, his wonder at their technology matched only by the humans' curiosity about Aquari stellar cartography. "They're not acting like prisoners," Morrison observed. "Because they're not," Elias replied. "Your people have treated us as honored guests from the moment we were brought aboard. The contrast with what we were taught about Deathworlders couldn't be more striking." A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Admiral Kane's voice filled the observation deck through hidden speakers. Captain Morrison, long-range sensors are detecting the Vorak fleet. They'll reach Proxima in 18 hours. Morrison activated the communication panel. Understood, sir. Are the colonists being evacuated? Negative. 50,000 people can't be moved in time, and most refuse to abandon the homes they've built. The 3rd Colonial Defense Force is moving to intercept, but they're outnumbered 3-1. Elias felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. In 18 hours, human defenders would face overwhelming odds to protect civilians who had done nothing more than choose to build lives on the frontier. When the Vorak opened fire, humanity would be forced to respond, and the galaxy would see only the violence of their retaliation, not the righteousness of their cause. Admiral Kane, Elias said, activating the communication system. This is Captain Vey. I request permission to remain with the fleet during the engagement. The pause that followed lasted several heartbeats. Captain, you understand what you're asking. This will likely be the first battle of a galactic war that could last decades. You'll be witnessing the birth of legends written in blood and starfire. I understand, Admiral, but someone must bear witness to the truth. Someone the Council cannot simply dismiss as human propaganda. Kane's voice carried profound respect when he replied. Very well, Captain. Welcome to the fleet that will show the galaxy what humans fight for. As the Iron Hammer accelerated toward its destiny, Elias found himself thinking about sci-fi stories he had read as a youngling, tales of heroes and monsters of civilizations that rose and fell on the choices of individuals. He had never imagined he would become a character in such a story himself. But perhaps that was the true nature of heroism, not seeking out legend, but simply being in the right place at the right time with the courage to speak truth, regardless of consequences. Behind him, he could hear Sergeant Stone teaching one of the Aquari younglings a human lullaby. The child's translation device struggled with the words, but the melody carried across species barriers like a bridge of hope. Sleep now, little warrior, beneath the guardian stars. Dream of worlds where children laugh and peace heals ancient scars. The fleet that guards your slumber carries more than steel and flame. It carries all our hopes that love will triumph over shame. Through the viewport, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, indifferent to the struggles of the small creatures who dared to love and fight and dream among their light. But on the bridge of the Iron Hammer, an Aquari captain understood that he carried the future of galactic civilization in his testimony. The humans had called themselves monsters. The Council had branded them as savages, but Elias Vey had seen them give their breath to save strangers, modify their warships to comfort aliens, and prepare to die defending colonists who had only wanted to raise families among the stars. When the history of this moment was written in the stone of galactic memory, it would record that the weakest species became the strongest warriors, not through conquest, but through the simple choice to protect rather than destroy, to heal rather than harm, to love rather than hate. The echo of their sacrifice would ring through eternity, a song of hope that even monsters could choose to be angels. And in the darkness between the stars, that song would be enough to light the way home. The echoes of their sacrifice still ring through the cosmos, a reminder that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to protect what cannot protect itself. If this story moved you, if it made you believe that even in the darkest void between the stars, compassion can light the way forward for civilizations that have lost their way, then share it with others who need to hear that monsters can choose to be angels. Like this video to help others discover that the greatest warriors are often the gentlest souls, and subscribe to join our archive voyagers as we explore more tales of hope written in starlight and courage forged in the fires of adversity. What would you choose in the darkness between stars, to be feared for your strength or to be loved for how you use it? Let us know in the comments below, fellow traveler among the infinite wonders of the galaxy.